All right, what the hell is happening in California? Dems just pulled ahead in another House race. This makes 4 House seats where the Republican was leading for weeks, by the way, and in the last few days, suddenly the seat flips to the Democrat candidate. We have the details. Also, the latest on Tulsi Gabbard's nomination, Trump's new D&I pick, one of the most powerful jobs in all of government. CNN could be in some hot water over this after airing this. We have the clip and more stories from around the country. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So for generations, California was the envy of the world, right? It symbolized everything that was great about America. It was the most beautiful place in the world. Amazing weather, ancient forests, beautiful beaches, stunning inland valleys. But it was more than that. It had the biggest middle class in the country. It had an education system that almost every other state envied. California was a state that made the American dream a reality. Well, today, the state of California is known for a very different set of images. Needles in the street, tent cities, all the rest, a dying middle class, and the country's highest poverty rate, with the highest homeless population in the country. But the one aspect of California that portrays just how far off the reservation they've gone, how inefficient and really morally bankrupt the government's become, is how they conduct their elections. They just don't want to count the votes. It's a problem. It's a real problem. It's why today, after nearly 3 weeks since Election Day, since Trump spanked Kamala Harris on November 5th, winning 312 electoral votes, winning the popular vote, sweeping the Congress, California is still not finished counting the votes. Florida, a huge state, massive state with almost 23 million residents, somehow managed to count all the votes the night of the election. Yet California, 3 weeks later, and we're still waiting to learn who our next congressman will be. It's disgraceful. There's a serious problem in California. And ladies and gentlemen, right now, today, Michelle Steele, the Republican in District 45, the Orange County area, has been leading in that race consistently. For the last 3 weeks, she's been winning. And late last night, what happens? Derek Tran, the Democrat, suddenly pulls ahead by 500 votes with 98% reporting. And look at this. The entire freaking time, she's been winning. But as the days pass by, as the weeks pass by, as these mail-in ballots sit there for weeks gathering dust, this suddenly happens. And it's not just this district. It's been happening in like half a dozen of these House races where the Republican was winning, and then right when they get to around 98% of the vote count, the Dem pulls ahead. And this has been going on for years. Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom has made it substantially worse, changing the law in an effort to move the entire state to mail-in ballots, which we all know are awful. They do this purposely. This election, around 50% of all votes in California came from mail-in ballots. In 2018, it was like 30%. All of this, another example of big government run amok, folks. Newsom pulled all funding for election workers, leaving it to the local municipalities to fund because they're running out of money over there. Yes, the largest state in the country, a state with a GDP greater than all individual European countries, is literally on the path to bankruptcy. In Oakland last week, they just announced they're going to be laying off like 70 cops, closing fire stations, and a bunch of other public services to solve their budget crisis. You can't make this up. Watch.
In a contingency budget plan released in June, the city talked about reducing the police force down to around 600 officers. Right now, the city has roughly 670 officers. Oakland had 613 officers back in 2013, so 600 would make it the smallest force in years. The contingency plan would also brown out a handful of fire stations, freeze positions across city departments, and reduce hours at rec centers, libraries, and senior centers.
In another story, Tulsi Gabbard's now establishment Washington's public enemy number one. They are coming for Tulsi Gabbard. Now that Gaetz withdrew his name for AG, they believe they were successful in eliminating Matt Gaetz from the Trump cabinet, the old guard of the Republican Party. That faction, which is alive and well in the Senate, saw that it wasn't so hard going against Donald Trump. Maybe he's all bark and no bite. They did this first by choosing John Thune instead of Rick Scott to be majority leader, and they just did it again with Matt Gaetz. That was a win for the swamp, people. Make no mistake about it. They need to know their jobs are on the line. The Senate is filled with these establishment Republicans who right now are working in lockstep with the Democrats to thwart Trump's agenda. They are as opposed to MAGA as the Democrats are. When it comes to Ukraine policy, they are in lockstep. When it comes to the neoliberal and conservative foreign policy, they are in lockstep with the Democrats. We know the names of the 5 Republican senators who quashed the Gates nomination. You could see their faces and names on the screen. Well, Tulsi Gabbard's next. Here's GOP Senator James Lankford, a Republican, one of the senators Tulsi needs to approve her nomination, telling CNN this morning that he's skeptical of voting for Tulsi's confirmation as DNI, saying he has a lot of questions. Watch.
Let's dig into some of the picks. His pick for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. She has a long history of questioning American intelligence. She repeatedly promoted Russian propaganda. She blamed the Ukraine war on the Biden administration and NATO rather than Putin. She wants the government to drop all charges against Edward Snowden. Nikki Haley called her a Russian, Iranian, Syrian, Chinese sympathizer. You're a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Will you support her to oversee America's intelligence community?
Yeah, like I said before, we're going to go through hearings. We're going to get everything out. We're going to get facts and information and get the entire story. She is somebody who has been very outspoken. She's obviously a past member of the military. She's a veteran herself. She's had the opportunity to be able to travel quite a bit around the world as a member of Congress to be able to interact with folks. And she's not been afraid to be able to speak out and to say, hey, I disagree on some areas. But that's a very different role than saying, what is your philosophy and what is President Trump's philosophy of how we're going to handle national intelligence? We have very important people that serve in our intelligence community. Literally every day our nation is at risk, and people around the world that most folks will never meet and will never get a chance to know are serving our nation. When you see a member of the military, many people will pay for their lunch or get a chance to say thank you to them. The members of our intelligence community, most folks don't ever know, don't get a chance to say thank you, but it's really important that we have leadership there that's able to support them and able to get them on focus.
Does anything about her concern you?
Well, we'll have lots of questions. She met with Bashir Assad. We'll want to know what the purpose was and what the direction for that was. As a member of Congress, we'll want to get a chance to talk about past comments that she's made and get them into full context. So sure, there's comments that are floating out there, but we want to be able to know the rest of the story.
This is going to be a fight, folks. They are terrified of having Tulsi in that job. The intel agencies, they don't like having to answer questions from anyone. Meanwhile, the national media exists to serve the interests of the powerful and, of course, to protect the intel agencies. NBC, for example, giving former Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Sue Gordon, virtually unlimited airtime to spew her propaganda, her latest, why she believes Tulsi is a threat to national security because she was in favor of pardoning Edward Snowden. You can't make this up. Roll the tape.
Another nerve in the intelligence community, of course, is Edward Snowden.
Yes.
Tulsi Gabbard and the selection for the Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, put forward resolutions to call for the charges to be dropped against him because he leaked classified national intelligence material. He's living in Russia these days. That kind of a position, how's that going to be received?
It reflects a lack of understanding of who we are, and it reflects a lack of respect for what we do. Unauthorized disclosures of intelligence are always bad. Don't go with the good or bad, any good outcome, or whether he was right or wrong. He had no authority and he had different paths, and he harmed America. He not only harmed intelligence, he harmed our allies and partners, and he harmed our businesses by what it allowed China to assume about that. There is nothing justifiable about what he's done. None. And so if they vacate it, what they're basically saying is all those rules you follow in order to be able to serve America, they don't matter anymore.
Sue Gordon, thank you for explaining this very opaque world of intelligence to us and for your analysis.
Edward Snowden exposed one of the worst crimes perpetrated on the American public, like ever, and Face the Nation host Margaret Brennan just nods along in total agreement. It's despicable. But what's even more despicable is a sitting member of Congress defaming an active servicewoman. Tulsi's a colonel in the U.S. Army, folks, currently, actively. And Democrat Tammy Duckworth goes on CNN and calls Tulsi Gabbard a compromised Russian asset. I hope Tulsi sues CNN, Tammy Duckworth, all of them, into oblivion for defamation. Watch this.
She's a critic of U.S. intelligence operations. She has promoted Russian propaganda. Your fellow Democrat, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, called her, quote, likely a Russian asset. Now, you and Tulsi Gabbard are both veterans. You served with her in the House. What do you think of her?
Well, I think she's compromised. I think by going to Syria and basically backing a brutal dictator there, Russian-controlled media called her a Russian asset. So I do think that we have a real deep concern whether or not she's a compromised person. And frankly, the U.S. intelligence committee, the U.S. intelligence community has identified her as having troubling relationships with America's foes. And so my worry is that she couldn't pass a background check.
And the crazy thing about this is the media allowing this on their airwaves. CNN's a giant media organization. They know none of this is true. They know all of this was started as a smear job by Hillary Clinton when Tulsi embarrassed her in the 2016 Democratic primary. We showed Megyn Kelly dismantling this hoax in yesterday's broadcast. What's really happening here is the swamp of Washington, D.C. doesn't want change agents coming in asking questions. They want everything to continue running the way it's been for the last 50 years, and nominating Tulsi for D&I is a giant middle finger to the IC. That was Trump telling the intel agencies, I don't trust you. All right, that wraps up the news portion of this video. Now I want to tell you about the sponsor for today, ATHA Energy, which ties directly into everything we've just been talking about, the massive change that's coming on January 20th, right when the Trump administration takes power. ATHA, a uranium mining and exploration company, this is hands down the best up-and-coming uranium company out there, in my opinion. From an investor's point of view, the best I've come across. And let me tell you why. Why this company, ATHA Energy, why this is the one. This is my go-to uranium company. Small cap with monumental upside potential. Today, ATHA's trading for only 65 cents Canadian a share, way under where their last capital raise was. So they raised 60 mil at $1 a share Canadian, which is 35% above the current share price. And let me just add some context why I like this company so much and why I'm even mentioning them right now in particular. It's all about timing, right? Donald Trump just won in a landslide. The timing is perfect. He won the popular vote, 312 electoral votes, swept the Congress and the Senate. He has a mandate to do what he wants. The Hill won't stand in his way when it comes to energy policy. Well, the first thing he's going to do, folks, is onshore U.S. energy production. Bigly. He wants to drill, baby, drill, and increase nuclear. To do that, he needs uranium, which is in a full-blown bull market right now, by the way. And why is that? Number one, there was a bipartisan bill banning Russian imports of uranium. That's 15% of all inbound uranium to the U.S. just gone, just like that. And 20% of American households get their heat and energy from nuclear energy. 30% of the world's uranium consumption comes from the United States. And now that Russia's off the table, the other countries that produce uranium, what are we left with? Kazakhstan? Niger? Not exactly a safe or consistent long-term strategy for uranium imports, but we now have Canada. And that's the place. That's the new go-to country for uranium. And ATHA Energy has the largest land package, 8.5 million acres across Canada's 3 top uranium jurisdictions. The Nunavut region, Newfoundland and Labrador, and Saskatchewan, the Athabasca Basin. You get it? ATHA Energy, Athabasca Basin, home to the highest grade uranium deposits and mines globally. ATHA's projects, they run the full gamut, folks, with several post-discovery development projects such as their flagship Anglilac Uranium Project, which is located in Nunavut, which hosts the LAC deposit, to their large portfolio of these highly prospective greenfields projects, which have tremendous upside potential as well, by the way. The company does things systematically, methodically. They are currently executing on a $30 million Canadian uranium-focused exploration program, one of the largest globally. That program consisting of 2 diamond drill programs on post-discovery projects Anglilac and Gemini, as well as a robust geophysics campaign designed to de-risk their greenfields portfolio of mineral claims in advance of future exploration. ATHA looks to have like tons of these catalysts on the horizon at a time when the world is turning their attention back to uranium. So look, here's what I'll do. I'll put a link to ATHA's website in the description. Make sure to do your own due diligence. I'm just providing some of the information on the company, my thoughts on why I like them so much, and a short overview